Tonight on NewsWatch, a midterm election preview in Florida, how one Republican's win could be a sign of what's to come. Plus, expanding overtime pay, the latest push from the president that has some worried about the economy. And meet a man who attends church at the same place he lives, on the streets. All this and more tonight on NewsWatch. Some say it's a sign of what's ahead in the midterm elections. Good evening, I'm Lori Johnson. Republicans won a major victory Tuesday in a Florida special election. The key issue among the candidates, the president's health care plan. Some are saying the GOP win is a warning sign to Democrats, and it comes as Obamacare enrollment predictions fall short. Gary Lane reports.
Political experts say the Florida special election was really a referendum on Obamacare. David Jolly made repealing the law a centerpiece of his Florida District 13 congressional campaign. And when all the votes were counted Tuesday night, the Republican was declared the winner.
Your concerns are my concerns, and I pledge every day to work with you and for you.
Perhaps working to make drastic changes to the Affordable Care Act or to fight to scrap it and begin again. That's because a majority of likely American voters oppose the law. 56% view it unfavorably, according to a recent Rasmussen poll. And there are fewer sign-ups than expected. Only 4.2 million by the end of February. That falls nearly 1.5 million short of President Obama's goal. And it's unlikely that a projected 6 million will sign up by the March 31st deadline. One of the biggest sign-up shortfalls is with young adults. Only 25% of enrollees are between the ages of 18 and 34. The Obama administration says that figure needs to be 40% to help offset the costs for unhealthy and older enrollees. Visiting Georgia, Health and Human Services Secretary Kathleen Sebelius urged young Americans to sign up.
If you're 27 years old and make $25,000 a year, you can find a plan that would cost you $105 a month. My guess is you can't find a pair of running shoes for $105 a month. I know you can't find a cell phone plan for $105 a month.
And President Obama was also on the stump for the Affordable Care Act. Comedic actor Gus Galifianakis questioned the president on the show Funny or Die.
Okay, let's get this out of the way. What did you come here to plug?
Well, first of all, I think it's fair to say that I wouldn't be with you here today if I didn't have something to plug. Have you heard of the Affordable Care Act?
Oh yeah, I heard about that. That's the thing that doesn't work. Why would you get the guy that created the Zune to make your website?
Healthcare.gov works great now.
So is the David Jolly victory in Florida a harbinger for the upcoming congressional election? Is Obamacare the issue that will help Republicans retake the Senate? Tea Party favorite Ted Cruz.
If there's one thing that unifies politicians of both parties, is their top priority is preserving their own hide. And if enough congressional Democrats realize they either stand with Obamacare and lose, or they listen to the American people and have a chance at staying in office, that's the one scenario we could do it in 2015. If not, we'll do it in 2017.
Gary Lane, CBN News.
For more on this, we turn now to Republican strategist Philip Stutz, who joins us from our Washington bureau. Thanks for joining us, Mr. Stutz.
Thanks for having me.
Well, what do you think Florida's results signal for the November election?
Yeah, a few things stand out, and I want to put some context into it, which is, Alex Sink ran for governor in 2010, and she won this particular district. President Obama has won this district twice. Alex Sink outraised David Jolly. David Jolly still won. This was a referendum on Obamacare. They made it a referendum on Obamacare, and it really portends a very bright future for Republicans in the 2014 midterms.
Well, what do you think Republicans should do at this point to take full advantage of the country's growing discontent with Obamacare?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I think the interesting part is keep running as they're running. But the other side of this is what President Obama is doing. He was down in Florida last week for vacation. He has played over 50 rounds of golf in the last year. He was, as your story just pointed out, on with a comedian, Zach Galifianakis, kind of poking fun at Obamacare. These things undermine what he's trying to do. It's creating a distrust among voters. We're seeing that in the polling across the country, and Republicans need to continue to run on that. But they also need to provide a solution, and I think they're working towards that.
Well, those crucial young adults are not signing up for Obamacare. Do you think that means that they're becoming disillusioned with the president or with the Democratic Party?
I don't know if it's that. What we're finding is that they're staying on their parents' plans more than anything else. And they, I just heard Kathleen Sebelius say that the $100 plan is cheaper than buying a pair of running shoes. Well, that's $100 a month. That's $1,200 a year. I've never bought running shoes that cost $1,200. And young people are looking at that and saying that's too expensive for them, not to mention the older Americans whose premiums are about to skyrocket.
The Obama administration has extended people's health care for another 2 years. Do you think that'll help Democrats in November, or have they already lost the battle with voters over health care?
Sure. I think voters see this as a purely political move. But what we're also going to see this fall is premiums are going to go up. They're not talking about premiums. They can't do anything about that. Kathleen Sebelius even said premiums are going up just the other day. That is going to be a huge, huge anchor to Democrats' hopes of trying to get back into the majority in Congress in 2014.
All right, Philip Stutz, thanks as always for your insights.
Thank you.
President Obama is facing his lowest public approval rating yet. A new Wall Street Journal NBC News poll finds only 41% of Americans approve of how the president's doing his job. Some 54% disapprove. Meanwhile, those on the right aren't doing much better. 45% of Americans have a negative view of the Republican Party. President Obama plans to boost overtime pay. His instructions to the Labor Department could affect millions of Americans, but critics say it could be yet another job killer. John Waggy explains.
Earlier this year, President Obama signed an executive order raising the minimum wage for some federal workers to more than $10 an hour. Now he may direct the Labor Department to force more employers to pay overtime for certain salaried workers. Critics say his policies are job restrictors, if not job killers, for American employers.
The way you help the poor most is through growth. What they need is jobs, not food stamps. What they need is an opportunity to get on that first rung of the economic ladder where their labor is not worth very much, and then climb that ladder through hard work and diligence and education.
But some economic analysts say some rungs on the ladder have been missing in recent years.
There are 700,000 fewer executive secretaries now than there were in 2007. Economists say that these mid-tier jobs have been hollowed out, and as a result, for those on the low end, it's pretty hard for them to climb up.
Richard Wilson started at Walmart stocking shelves. He's still doing that more than 2 years later and is waiting for a promised promotion.
Just found myself like many other Americans out here that did the right thing, that did what we were supposed to do, only to find out that the jobs that we were promising were not there, the career is not there.
But big companies have been struggling along with small ones, and the U.S. government isn't making things easier through more regulation.
We have about 140 million customers that shop in our stores each week, and if those people are getting more opportunities and are earning higher incomes, and there's a vibrant middle class, that's going to lead to more disposable income in people's wallets and pocketbooks. And, we'll get our fair share of that.
The president's class warfare arguments and regulations on business are popular with his political base, but a weak recovery may cause employers to pull back, and that could mean one more sign of trouble in November. John Waggy, CBN News.
An American pastor imprisoned in Iran is being refused medical treatment. Pastor Saeed Abedini's health is deteriorating as a result of prison beatings. The American Center for Law and Justice reports that over a week ago, he was moved from his jail cell to a private hospital for treatment, but today that treatment stopped. Pastor Saeed was shackled and was refused medical care, and hospital doctors said he must leave and return to prison. For more on this and how you can join the millions calling for Pastor Saeed to be released, you can visit our website, cbnnews.com. Also overseas, today Gaza militants fired dozens of rockets into southern Israel. The Islamic Jihad militia group is claiming responsibility for the attack, saying the rocket fire was to avenge the deaths of 3 of its members during an Israeli airstrike. Israel's military says its Iron Dome defense system stopped at least 3 of the rockets. The rest fell along border communities. There are no reports of casualties. The United States is committed to backing Ukraine's new government. That's the message President Obama is sending Russia tonight by meeting with the newer Ukrainian prime minister. Congress is also considering new sanctions against Russia for having military forces on the ground in Ukraine.
While we respect, obviously, that Russia has deep historical, cultural, and other kinds of interests with respect to Ukraine and particularly Crimea, nothing justifies a military intervention.
Ukrainians in the Crimean Peninsula are preparing to vote Sunday whether to remain part of Ukraine or to break away and join Russia. Search efforts continue tonight for that missing Malaysian plane, and authorities are not ruling out any possible cause for its sudden disappearance. It's been 5 days since Flight 370 disappeared with 239 people on board. Today, more nations joined the search for the plane, and the search area has been expanded to cover 36,000 square miles. Authorities are not ruling out the possibility of mechanical failure, pilot error, sabotage, or terrorism. Coming up, an Iraqi woman's childhood dream comes true. Watch her become an American citizen. Iraq was once home to a thriving Christian community, but not any longer. Now believers are fleeing the country, often coming to the United States. John Jessup introduces us to one Iraqi woman who recently became an American citizen.
A woman and Christian? President of Iraq? Yeah, give it a couple more centuries.
Asil al-Banna has always been bright and optimistic, but unlike her positive personality, many of her childhood memories were scarred by the dark clouds of war.
I was very determined I needed to get away. I just couldn't see any future for myself.
She and her family fled Baghdad in 1991 to escape what seemed like endless fighting. She was 10 years old when the nearly decade-long Iran-Iraq war started, and 19 when U.S. troops launched Operation Desert Storm. After a month seeking refuge in Jordan, she convinced her dad to take her to a country she'd always dreamed of visiting.
I begged my father. I said, Dad, please, let's just go to the American embassy. Let's just try. It was like a dream to me, liberty and freedom of expression. I didn't grow up with that, so I really wanted it.
She and her father had round-trip tickets to visit relatives in Kentucky, but her aunt had other plans for Asil, and they didn't include returning to the dictatorial rule of Saddam Hussein.
She told my father, this girl I will never ever let her leave back with you. My father was like, what are you talking about? She's my daughter.
Asil's aunt helped her get into the University of Kentucky's architecture program. She graduated, started working in design, and has flourished in the U.S. ever since, feeling more American as time went by.
Being Iraqi, it's who I am, who I've been. Being American, on the other hand, is who I became, who I grew into.
And recently, on the 222nd anniversary of the U.S. Bill of Rights, she took the oath and became an American citizen, surrounded by our founding documents at the National Archives in Washington, D.C.
This country is wonderful in opening its doors to immigrants. And very often you come and you rush through the process. For me, it was more of a growing experience. And so today it was more like I'm sealing the deal.
She still cares deeply for her native Iraq and its people, but her hopes have dimmed on an issue that hits close to home, the growing persecution of Christians in the Middle East.
Honestly, I don't see a future. I think it doesn't look good.
Asil is an Iraqi Christian, home to one of the world's oldest Christian populations.
It's considered a very honest and fair community, and they gave a lot to Iraq, to the country.
But after the Iraq War began, Christians became an easy target, frequently persecuted, tortured, or killed. In the last 10 years, of the more than 1 million Christians who once called Iraq home, only about a third are left, with more fleeing daily.
There's just no doubt that ancient and historic Christian communities are threatened as never before.
The situation is essentially the same in Syria and in Egypt, where civil unrest is making it nearly impossible for once ancient Christian communities to survive. As a new American citizen, Asil has high hopes for the country she now calls home and plans to take full advantage of the rights and freedoms she never knew in Iraq, like voting. This spring, she intends to cast her very first ballot for a fellow Iraqi who's running for office in Washington, D.C., a scenario she understands is unique to the American experience.
This doesn't happen in many countries, but it definitely happens in the United States. It just gave me this hope, like you can do anything you want. You can be anyone you want to be. And that's what's so beautiful about this country.
John Jessup, CBN News, Washington.
Up next, meet the woman reaching those without homes through a church without walls. Emergency crews are still sifting through the debris of a building collapse in New York City. At least 2 people were killed and dozens are still missing. An explosion happened this morning in East Harlem, leveling 2 buildings, one of which housed a church. Right now, authorities suspect a gas leak is behind the blast. Record high numbers of homeless people are seeking shelter in New York City. The Coalition for the Homeless reports nearly 54,000 people stayed in overnight shelters in January, the highest number ever recorded. More than 22,000 of those were children. On average, homeless families in New York City will stay in a shelter for almost 15 months. Nationwide, more than 600,000 Americans are homeless. And for those living on the streets of Charlotte, North Carolina, one grandmother is providing help. Ephraim Graham has her story in tonight's Focus Report.
The streets of Charlotte are home to more than 3,000 people. Rory Hot Dog Montgomery is one of them.
The way I was explaining, you are where you want, where God wants you to be at that time that He wants you to be there. I don't consider myself homeless. I'm just residentially disadvantaged.
At 63, Rory can fit all he owns in a shopping cart, but he's not bitter about his lot in life.
If I can do something good for somebody, even though I don't have, then maybe somebody that have can do something else for somebody else that don't have.
And Hot Dog's giving heart is pumped even bigger on Sunday afternoon.
God will never be talking back to you.
When he joins dozens of other homeless for church in this parking lot.
Get you off that corner of the block, you ain't in the riffraff. This might be the time something happened up there and God put me here to save me.
Doing mission work and traveling to different countries.
The tireless grandmother behind this growing church without walls is Freddie Power.
Okay. By God's grace, I'm not there. You know, we all could be there.
This is the second homeless church Miss Freddie has started through her Keeping Hope Alive ministry. They come for encouragement.
Yeah, and I feel like God says that He's just really proud of you in that role that you have.
Prayer.
He will always take care of me. He will always take care of me.
And food.
How's your job going? It's okay. Did you find a place to live?
This is still a walk of faith for Miss Freddie, who emptied her bank account to buy groceries for that very first service in 2008.
22 people gave their heart to Jesus that weekend. So I said, okay, God, what are you doing? What are you doing here? Just to do it again? And He said, yes, I want you to go do it again. Someone gave me money, so we were around, and 22 more people gave their heart to Jesus. And then He said, I want you to start a church for the homeless. Put out a few plastic chairs, and I'll bring the people.
Freddie Power's first church to the homeless began here on the corner of Duckworth and Wesley Heights on the streets of Charlotte. It's a corner with real spiritual significance for the city.
How are you today? I didn't see you last week.
That's because it meets just across the street from the site of a famous church built by Alfred Garr in the 1930s.
Even during the Depression, he brought the old Coliseum of Charlotte a brick at a time over here to build this. And it was this thick. The walls were this thick. And he paid them a sandwich a day just for the working. Isn't that amazing? And he believed in that church, and he believed that the Holy Spirit was coming in power.
Miss Freddie says she and her team still witness miracles in the neighborhood today.
Someone invited me to come to the Gar Church land. The building was there then, and we felt the presence of the Lord still on the place for all the miracles that happened during that time. That's what's so great about it. We show up, and God does the rest. I don't do that part. I don't do the miracles, but he does. And he saves people and he heals people.
Hot Dog is one of those miracles. Though blind in one eye, he can still create works of art like this with just a pencil, a Q-tip, and an eraser.
I use what God gave me when I can.
When you can.
Give me a little peace of mind.
He has such talent. He's amazing. And there he is on the streets. I couldn't believe it.
Miss Freddie offers only one prayer for Hot Dog and for the other walking miracles on these streets.
I want God to be real to them right where they're at. I want them to live a supernatural miracle life right where they're at.
And that work is why some call her Charlotte's Mother Teresa.
You'll find it. You're doing good.
All right.
All right, see ya.
You coming next week?
I'll be here. Yeah.
Ephraim Graham, CBN News, Charlotte, North Carolina.
You haven't got a chance to pray for it?
Up next, brace yourselves for a specialty coffee that's a treat for your taste buds, but not your budget. Here's a question for coffee lovers. How much are you willing to pay for that daily fix of caffeine? Boudin, a new specialty coffee shop in New York City, has a $10 latte on their menu.
Coffee beans better be made of gold for $10.
I think it should better keep me up for 48 hours nonstop.
Boudin's owners say the $10 latte uses rare and expensive Ethiopian beans, along with a special syrup and licorice powder, which is what drives up the price. And while some customers admit to splurging once in a while, for the most part, they stick to the lower-priced coffee, which starts at $2.50 a cup. And then there are those of us who think $2.50 is still too much to spend for a cup of coffee. Well, that's all we have for this edition of NewsWatch. Remember, you can email us your questions and comments at newswatch@cbn.com. And we hope you'll join us again tomorrow. Have a great night.